President Donald Trump's inauguration was nothing short of a family reunion. However, it was the 6'7", 18-year-old Barron Trump who stole the spotlight.
I have a very tall son named Barron. Has anyone ever heard of him?
Barron Trump, long known as the quiet and reserved member of his high-profile family, has just shaken things up in a way no one saw coming. For years, Barron Trump remained in the background, allowing the rest of the Trump family to dominate the headlines. But now something's different. Suddenly, he's stepping forward, making people wonder, what has changed? Has he decided it's time to carve out his own identity? Or is this just the first glimpse of a much bigger shift? One thing's for sure. The world is watching, and the big question remains. What's next for the youngest Trump? Hidden from the spotlight, Barron Trump has always stood apart from his famous family, not because of what he's done, but because of what he hasn't. Unlike his siblings, who have spent years in the public eye actively supporting their father's political career or managing the Trump organization, Barron has chosen a path of privacy. As the youngest of Donald Trump's 5 children, he has remained an enigma, watching from the sidelines while his brothers and sisters took on leadership roles, delivered speeches at political conventions, and became deeply entrenched in the Trump legacy. Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump, both from Donald's first marriage to Ivana Trump, were raised in the public eye, quickly becoming key figures in their father's business empire and political ventures. Ivanka Trump, their sister, took things even further, serving as an official White House advisor alongside her husband, Jared Kushner. Even Tiffany Trump, born from Donald's second marriage to Marla Maples, made public appearances in support of her father's campaigns. In contrast, Barron was nowhere to be seen at major political events, never delivering speeches or making headlines the way his siblings did. This absence only fueled curiosity. Why was he different? Was it a conscious choice, or was there a more deliberate effort to keep him away from the family's highly publicized affairs? One of the biggest factors in Barron's low profile is undoubtedly his mother, Melania Trump, known for her fiercely private nature. Melania has always made Barron's well-being her top priority. Even when she was First Lady, she largely avoided the political limelight, choosing instead to focus on her son's upbringing. Insiders have noted that she is deeply protective of Barron, ensuring that he leads as normal a life as possible despite his family's fame. Unlike his older brothers, who were thrust into the business and political world early on, Barron was kept out of the spotlight, with Melania making sure he wasn't used as a political prop. Melania's protective nature isn't just about keeping Barron out of politics. It's also about shielding him from criticism. Over the years, Barron has been the target of undue scrutiny, but his mother has always been there to guard him from the public eye. Scrutiny is something Melania Trump has never taken lightly. When actor Peter Fonda made an inappropriate remark, suggesting Barron should be taken from his family as a political statement, Melania didn't hesitate to report it to the Secret Service. Similarly, when Stanford law professor Pamela Karlan made a joke about Barron's name during his father's impeachment trial, Melania was quick to condemn her words, publicly stating that a minor child deserves privacy and should be kept out of politics. Even though Karlan later apologized, the incident reinforced Melania's unwavering commitment to protecting her son. Another major influence in Barron's life has been his grandparents, who live at the Trump family's Mar-a-Lago estate. Melania's parents, particularly her mother, have played a significant role in his upbringing, surrounding him with family rather than the high-profile figures who typically fill Trump's inner circle. Sources close to the family describe Melania as being fully dedicated to Barron, emphasizing that her main focus has always been ensuring he is raised in a stable and secure environment. While some might see Barron's reserved nature as mere shyness, others believe it reflects a deeper sense of independence. Unlike his siblings, who seem to naturally embrace the fame and power associated with the Trump name, Barron appears uninterested in stepping into the spotlight. Whether this is a temporary phase or a long-term decision remains to be seen. But as he grows older, the world continues to wonder if and when he will decide to step out from the shadows and redefine his place within the Trump dynasty. Why Barron broke his silence. Turning 18 is a big deal for anyone, but for Barron Trump, it wasn't just a milestone. It was a moment that changed everything. For years, he had been a quiet figure in one of the most talked about families in the world. a presence in the background while his father, Donald Trump, dominated headlines. But stepping into adulthood brought new expectations, new pressures, and a crucial decision. Who would he be now that the world saw him as his own person? Growing up as the youngest Trump meant living under a microscope. Every public appearance, every moment of silence, every rare smile or glance sparked endless speculation. Unlike his older siblings, Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, and Ivanka Trump, Barron never took center stage. His brothers and sister embraced the family name, diving headfirst into their father's business empire and political career. They made speeches at conventions, campaigned for their father, and became high-profile figures in their own right. Even Tiffany Trump, his half-sister from Donald's marriage to Marla Maples, stepped into the spotlight on occasion. But Barron remained an enigma. While his siblings built careers under the Trump brand, he stayed out of the fray, seemingly uninterested in joining the public spotlight. Uninterested in the fame and power that came with his last name, Barron Trump's perspective began to shift as he turned 18. Suddenly, he wasn't just the youngest Trump anymore. He was legally an adult, with the ability to make decisions about his own life, career, and public persona. With this newfound independence came a question that had loomed over him for years. Would he follow in his family's footsteps, or chart a different course entirely? The pressure didn't just come from within the family, it came from the world, outside too. Politics moves fast, and the Trump name remains one of the most polarizing in modern history. Whether he wanted to or not, Barron was stepping into a world that had already formed opinions about him before he'd even spoken a word. Did he feel the need to take a stand on something, correct the narrative, or step into the political arena like his father and brothers? Or was this about something deeper? A personal realization that it was time to stop being the silent observer and start defining himself on his own terms. Looking back, the signs of change had been there. Over the past year, Barron had started making more public appearances. Though he still wasn't vocal, his presence spoke volumes. He carried himself with newfound confidence, standing taller, looking more assured. Small moments, his body language, his interactions, and the way he handled the cameras suggested that the once shy teenager was beginning to step into his own. It wasn't just about growing up, it was about transformation. And then, finally, the moment came. After years of watching, listening, and staying in the background, Barron made the decision to step forward. The years of silence had led to this point, a turning point, not just in his life, but in the way the world would see him from now on. He had spent his entire childhood under the weight of a name that carried enormous influence, expectations, and controversy. But now, he had something else, a voice. The choice of how to use his newfound voice was entirely Barron's. For him, this wasn't just about breaking his silence. It was about reclaiming his narrative, stepping out of the shadows, and figuring out his place in a world that had long expected him to stay quiet. Now, all eyes were on him, not because of his last name, but because of the question that hung in the air. What would he do next? The revelation was shocking. Barron Trump's response, though brief, had a seismic impact. After years of silence, his words carried a weight that took everyone by surprise. He didn't speak in riddles or vague statements. There were no cryptic messages or carefully crafted phrases designed for dissection and overanalysis. His message was direct, sharp, and impossible to ignore. But it wasn't just what he said that sent shockwaves. It was how he said it. The reaction was immediate. Within moments, his words were everywhere. News outlets scrambled to analyze every syllable, each trying to outdo the other in deciphering the true meaning behind his statement. Social media exploded with debate, swinging between admiration and outright disbelief. Some saw it as a declaration of independence, the moment Barron Trump finally stepped out of his father's immense shadow. Others viewed it as something more explosive, a break from the Trump family's long-established traditions and loyalties. Regardless of the interpretation, one thing was clear. Barron's voice was no longer just a quiet murmur in the background. It had become a focal point, raising a crucial question. Was this simply a young man finding his voice, or was this an outright act of defiance? The timing of his statement made it all the more significant. Turning 18 had already marked a major turning point in Barron's life, granting him newfound autonomy and responsibility. But the way he chose his words, the deliberate nature of his statement, hinted at something deeper. It wasn't just an announcement to the world. It felt personal, as if the message wasn't just meant for the public, but for his own family. Then, in a moment that seemed almost cinematic, the world got another rare glimpse of Barron. In December 2024, it was in the documentary series Art of the Surge that his voice was publicly heard for the first time. The clip was short, just 17 seconds, but its impact was undeniable. In it, Barron greeted a woman and shook hands with UFC founder Dana White. On election night, his father, Donald Trump, had joked about turning Barron into a fighter, and in response, Barron let out a brief laugh and made a dismissive gesture. The moment was small, yet it carried an unexpected resonance. For years, people had speculated about Barron Trump, his beliefs, his ambitions, and how he truly saw the world. And now, in just a few words, he had answered them all, while creating even more questions. Who was the real Barron Trump? Had he been silently observing his family's political chaos all these years, forming his own opinions behind the scenes? And perhaps most importantly, was this just the beginning? As for the Trump family, how did they react publicly? They didn't. There were no official responses, no tweets, no carefully worded statements attempting to control the narrative, just a deafening silence that only fueled the speculation. Behind closed doors, however, it was impossible to imagine that things were just business as usual. Were his older brothers impressed or furious? Did his father see it as an act of rebellion, or was he secretly proud? The Trump family, known for their bold personalities and public confrontations, now found themselves in unfamiliar territory, where the quietest member had suddenly become the loudest. Then came the media frenzy. Barron's statement became headline news for days. Political analysts, body language experts, and journalists all dissected his words, his tone, even the pauses between his sentences. Was this a defining moment in the Trump legacy? Was the balance of power shifting within the family? Every podcast, news panel, and social media influencer had an opinion. Barron Trump, once just an observer in his family's high-stakes world, was now the subject of global discussion. His presence at a July 2024 rally in Doral, Florida, had already hinted at his growing role. That day, he made his political debut. When his father introduced him to the crowd, Barron stood, waved, and gave a thumbs up. It was a simple gesture, but enough to set the internet ablaze. And now, with his brief appearance in Art of the Surge, he had taken things a step further. He had finally spoken. The question that remains is, what comes next for Barron Trump? Will he continue stepping into the limelight, embracing the political legacy of his family? Or was this moment just an anomaly, a brief glimpse before he retreats into the privacy he has always seemed to prefer? No one can say for sure, but one thing is certain. The world is watching, and for the first time, Barron Trump has given them something to talk about. Barron's secret life growing up as the youngest member of the Trump family was anything but ordinary for Barron Trump. From the moment he was born, he was surrounded by immense wealth, relentless media scrutiny, and a political storm that most children could never comprehend. While his siblings embraced the spotlight, becoming public figures, business leaders, and political influencers, Barron chose an entirely different path. He remained on the sidelines. His silence acted as a shield, protecting him from the chaos that constantly surrounded his family. From an early age, it was clear that Barron had no desire to be the center of attention. Unlike his brothers, who thrived in front of cameras, gave interviews, and maintained a strong presence on social media, Barron preferred to remain in the background. He was rarely seen speaking at public events. And when he did make an appearance alongside his parents, his expression remained composed and reserved. This lack of visibility only made him more intriguing to the public. While the media dissected every move his family made, Barron's silence created an air of mystery that set him apart. Growing up as a Trump meant facing immense pressure alongside privilege. The Trump name carried expectations, scrutiny, and an unavoidable level of attention. But Barron wasn't just navigating school and the usual teenage struggles. He was doing it all under the watchful eyes of the world. Every expression, every gesture, every rare public moment was analyzed. It's no surprise that he chose to remain out of the limelight in a world where unpredictability was the norm. His quiet nature might have been his way of maintaining some sense of stability. The contrast between Barron and his siblings only made his reserved nature more striking. It was noticeable that Donald Jr. and Eric were deeply involved in the family business, frequently making headlines for their outspoken political views. Ivanka, a prominent figure in both politics and fashion, was often at the forefront of major events, actively supporting her father. Even Tiffany, who maintained a relatively low profile, still participated in campaigns and media appearances. Yet, as his siblings became increasingly visible, Barron seemed to fade into the background. His absence from the public eye only made his quiet presence stand out even more. Silence can shape a person in many ways. It can be a source of strength or a heavy burden. For Barron, his years of staying out of the spotlight likely gave him time to reflect, process, and observe from a distance. He had the rare opportunity to see his family's world unfold without being directly involved in it. This perspective may have allowed him to form his own opinions and gain clarity about his place within the Trump dynasty, but at the same time, his solitude may have come with its own challenges. Did his decision to stay silent make him feel isolated, even within his own family? Now, as Barron begins to step forward, the world is finally starting to grasp the depth of his quiet nature. His silence wasn't just a personality trait, it was a defining chapter of his life. In a family known for its loud, unfiltered opinions, Barron chose to carve his own path, not with words, but with years of quiet observation. And now that he is beginning to speak, the question remains: will his voice carry more weight because of the silence that preceded it? The impact on his family. This moment in Barron Trump's life was more than just a single statement. It was a seismic shift within the Trump family, sending shockwaves through both the public and private spheres. His words, once released into the world, did not merely make headlines. They disrupted the carefully constructed dynamic that had long defined the Trump household. What had previously been an unchallenged hierarchy now faced an unexpected twist, with Barron stepping into a role no one had anticipated. For years, Barron had remained on the sidelines, a quiet presence amid a family known for its boldness and public dominance. Unlike his siblings Ivanka, Donald Jr., and Eric, who were active in politics and business, Barron had remained an enigma. The youngest Trump rarely made statements, avoided controversies, and kept a low profile. But all of that changed in an instant. The question that lingered wasn't just about what Barron had said. It was about why he said it. Was this a long-brewing desire to assert his own identity, a quiet rebellion? Or had something behind the scenes pushed him into the spotlight? The impact of his statement on his father, Donald Trump, was undoubtedly profound. The former president had always maintained tight control over his public image, carefully curating the narrative surrounding both himself and his family. The Trump brand was built on strength, unity, and unwavering loyalty. For Barron to step out of the shadows and deliver a message of his own, especially at such a critical moment, could be seen as a challenge to that control. Would Donald Trump view this as an act of defiance, or as a natural evolution of his son's independence? Would he embrace Barron's voice, or seek to rein it in before it changed too much? His siblings' reactions could be just as telling. Donald Jr. and Eric, longtime champions of their father's vision, had spent years reinforcing the Trump image. Ivanka, with her polished diplomacy and influence, had always been a stabilizing force in the family. Now, with Barron stepping forward, how would they react to the shift in family dynamics? They now faced an internal shift. Would they see him as a new voice to be included, or as an unpredictable factor that could disrupt the status quo? Would they rally behind him, or would this moment create unseen fractures within their relationships? Beyond the family itself, the Trump name carries immense weight in the public sphere. From business ventures to political ambitions, their influence extends far beyond personal matters. For decades, their success has relied on a united front, whether in times of prosperity or controversy. But with Barron stepping into the conversation, the family's public image might be at risk of shifting. Could his emergence redefine how the Trump legacy is perceived? Would it strengthen their influence by introducing a fresh perspective, or weaken it by revealing internal differences? One thing is certain: this moment cannot be ignored. Barron Trump, the family's most silent member, has spoken, and the world is listening. What happens next remains unknown, but one question lingers. Is this the beginning of a new chapter for the Trump family, or the moment everything changes? New beginnings. For years, Barron has been seen but rarely heard. He's often described as private, reserved, and even somewhat of an enigma within the Trump family. Growing up in the White House during some of the most politically charged years in recent history, he was shielded from the media in ways his father and siblings never were. His presence at events was minimal, and when he did appear, he remained silent, leaving the public to wonder about his thoughts, ambitions, and future. But now, that silence has been broken. And what's most interesting is that he didn't just say something. He said something that mattered. His words carried weight, enough to make people sit up and take notice. That alone suggests one crucial thing. Barron Trump is ready to define himself beyond just being Donald Trump's youngest son. So, what does this mean? Is he slowly stepping into the public eye, preparing for a future where he takes on a more active role? Or was this a one-time occurrence, a rare glimpse into his personality before he retreats into privacy again? For now, there are more questions than answers. Does he have any real interest in politics like his father? Or is he hoping to completely distance himself from that world? Maybe he'll go the route of other political children, choosing quieter lives far removed from the family name's legacy. Or perhaps this is just the start of something bigger. A signal that Barron has thoughts and opinions, and he's finally ready to share them. What's particularly interesting is that Barron's situation is completely unique. Despite coming from one of the most talked about families in America, he's been given something his father and older siblings never really had: the ability to choose. While Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric were involved in their father's business and political endeavors from an early age, Barron has been largely untouched by that world, at least publicly. This means he has the freedom to forge his own path in a way that no other Trump has before. But will he take advantage of that freedom? Or will he eventually get pulled into the orbit of Trump's massive influence, just like the rest of his family? A larger trend beyond Barron himself. His decision to speak out reflects a much bigger trend among younger generations today. More and more young people are pushing back against the expectations placed on them by their families, society, and the media. They don't want to be defined by their last names or forced into roles they never asked for. Instead, they want to carve out identities that feel authentic to them. Barron's boldness, his willingness to say something in a way we've never really seen before, might be a sign that he's thinking along those lines too. Maybe he's not interested in following the Trump playbook. Maybe he wants to write his own story. It's a fascinating shift, especially considering how many people assumed Barron would just quietly follow in his father's footsteps. But what if he doesn't? What if, instead of politics or business, he chooses a completely unexpected path? Imagine if he went into entertainment, sports, philanthropy, or even something artistic. How would the public react? How would his family? The possibilities are endless, and that's exactly what makes this moment so intriguing. Naturally, the internet is buzzing with speculation. Some people think this is just a passing moment, a blip on the radar before Barron disappears from the public eye again. Others believe this could be the start of something much bigger, that he's finally stepping forward and claiming a role in the Trump family legacy. No matter what happens next, one thing is certain: this won't be the last time people talk about Barron Trump. Whether he steps up and takes on a more public role or chooses to stay in the background, his name will always carry a certain level of curiosity and intrigue. So, what do you think? Is Barron gearing up for a more outspoken future, or will he keep his life as private as possible? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.